everybody, today we're going to be reading There Is No Escape, Yandere SCP Foundation ex-listener up in here. But without further ado, before we even get started, let's get straight into the recap.
It's recap time!
Okay, so everyone, last time we left off, we got to meet finally SCP-035, which, as you guys know, is basically the mask that is the SAS, pretty much. And at first, this mask was decently nice to us until he started asking very personal questions that made us snap and literally smash his ass, making him flinch. We were pretty mad, and then afterward, like after getting out, we felt really bad for getting angry, which I'm like, what is going on with you, fool? Like, that is disgusting. We meet another SCP later on, but before that we meet Kane. This is Kane, by the way, you know, like I said earlier, last vid, simp material. And anyway, we meet this other Keter class, which is SCP-939, who is how do I say this, some type of shadow or like a creature that like basically lives in the dark and copies people's voices to, you know, off them. And for some reason, even though these people love us, they just still shove us in here. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Just ridiculous. We enter, and we end up messing with SCP. What is the number again? 939. And we hit it at first. It whined. We felt sorry. Later on in the predicament, somehow, we had to go back because they ordered us to come back, right? As we would try to go back as silent as possible, not to bother SCP-939, it ended up biting her in the shoulder, and they're like, oh shit, oh fuck, and she ended up getting out, but basically Dr. Love has to now carry her to the hospital. I meant the paramedic area or whatever, where they take care of their patients, and that's because it's dumbass fault. Like. And now he's worried about this. So, anyways, that is. Hey, y'all. Hey, everyone. So I wanted to give you guys a heads up / warnings to, you know, let y'all know before y'all start reading this or hearing me read this amazing fan fiction. So first things first, I'd like to mention that I will mention a lot of trauma of people or family crashing, dying, and a bit of therapist as well mixed in there. I'd also like to mention that there will be a lot of blood, violence, and a lot of scenes of NSFX mentioned in here. Not that I read it per se, but it gets really close to that, so I wanted to give you guys a heads up for that. And yeah, just be aware of there will be some things that you guys might get a little uncomfortable with, but don't worry, don't get too much into NSFX. There will be two specific, very, very specific ones, and then there would be a very like torture-y area going on. Not too torture-y, like masky. We're talking like of the very low torture side, if that makes sense. Anyways, that's your warnings. Go ahead if y'all are uncomfortable with this or anything like that. Please do not watch this video at all. Please, save yourselves. But you have been warned. Anyways, always in chapter 6, infirmary, and you're on fire. Dr. Clef POV. I sat next to YN's bed as she panted slightly from a fever. Dr. Clef, sir? Someone said as I turned around, seeing one of the doctors. The D-class wound is infected and she'll be here for a day. They said as I nodded. Yeah, alright, you're dismissed. I said as they quickly ran off. I sighed, looking back to YN as her face was slightly red. Cute. I ran my finger over her cheek as she leaned into my touch, probably liking how cold my hands were. I smiled and I laid my face down, breathing in. Suki. Why can't I get you out of my head? I ran my fingers through her hair, breathing in the smell. Just be mine already. Don't even look at that immortal bastard. I was snapped out of my thoughts as I heard footsteps approaching the infirmary. I looked over, seeing Dr. Bright walk into the room as I stood up. I was wondering where she was. Or went, right? He said, walking over to us as I stepped in between them. Why are you here? I asked. Why are you here? He asked, smirking. I brought her here. Now, why are you here, you monkey? I asked, smirking as he pouted. Monkey? What the hell are you talking about? You want to be cowboy? He yelled as a knock caught our attention. There we go. We both turned our heads, looking to the door, seeing Dr. Glass smiling at us. Am I interrupting something? He asked, smiling. Well, shit. No. Me and Jack said at the same time. What are you doing here? I asked as he walked over to Wyan, grabbing a clipboard that was at the end of the bed. Seeing my patient, he said, reading through the medical info. Your patient? Dr. Bright asked. Dr. Glass sighed as he walked over and sat down next to Wyan. Dr. Bright talked about her emotional strain that she could be going through, so I thought I should check her out. He said, smiling, as I looked over to Jack. Dumbass, I said as he rolled his eyes. I looked over to Dr. Glass, seeing him run a hand through Wyan's hair. What the fuck? I felt my eyes darken and my stomach sink. So, what are you gonna do tonight? Like, wanna go out drinking with me? I asked as Dr. Glass smiled at me. Sure, yeah, I'll join. Dr. Bright. What's going on here? Oh my goodness. Dr. Bright said, giving me a look that said, I'll help. Dr. Glass smiled and got up from his chair. I would join you if that night wasn't going to end me getting a bullet in my head. He said, what do you mean? Dr. Bright said, trying to sound innocent as I shook my head. Dude, stop. He knows. I said, shoving my hand into my pockets. Yeah. He muttered, his kind smiling turning a little sour. I kind of figured someone would have the same feelings I have for Wyan. Plus, it just made sense. Seeing you were the ones to talk to her. Also, Dr. Bright was kind of acting suspicious. He said, still giving a smile as it started to seem less kind and more ominous. Dr. Glass walked a little closer as I felt a shiver run up my spine. Am I really being intimidated by this baby-faced kid? I growled as I stormed up to Dr. Glass, grabbing him by the shirt. Look here, you little shithead. I don't know what's going on through your head, but now I won't hesitate to kill you. I said as he frowned slightly. Oh, you won't do that, he said as I growled. And why's that, smartass? I asked as Dr. Bright walked over to us. Guys, just calm down now. We both cut him off. Shut it. We yelled at the same time as I looked over to Bright as he glared. I looked back to Dr. Glass as he smiled. The reason why you won't kill me is how you think YN will react. I think we both can say seeing me die or get hurt will make her less than stable. He said as I smirked. Who said she will ever see you die? I asked. Because the only time I'm being weak is in front of her, and that means the only time you'll have to kill me is in front of her. He said, guys, can we just stop? I cut Bright off. Shut up! I yelled as he covered my mouth, shushing me. Can we argue somewhere else, or Wyan will wake up? He whisper yelled. As I looked over to Wyan, seeing her moving around slightly. I sighed as I grabbed Dr. Glass's arms, pulling him away out of the room as Dr. Bright followed, groaning. Oh, shut up! Someone will tell me when she wakes. Will someone tell me when she wakes up? I said, walking down the hallway. Time skip to next morning / Wyan's POV. I felt my shoulders sting as my eyes slowly fluttered open. What happened? I sat up, seeing someone change me into a different orange suit. Alright, I was bitten by SCP-939. I rubbed my shoulders, seeing blood seeping through the bandages. I sighed as the door opened with the guy who I ran into yesterday. What was his name? Dr. Gerald? No, it was Gerald. That's what Dr. Glass said. He walked into the room limping. Ow, ow, ow. He muttered under his breath as he sat down on the bed next to me. Oh, look at him, Mr. Burnt Chicken Nugget. I looked at him, seeing he was already covered in bandages and cuts. Hi, he said, waving at me as I smiled. You look like you've been through a lot. I said as he chuckled. Yeah, but this happens a lot to me, so I'm used to it. He said, looking around for a doctor. Hey, a little help? There was some rustling around the infirmary as a doctor came around the curtain. Ah, Dr. Gerald, you're back, the doctor said, waving back over to us. What is it now, Dr. Gerald? They asked as he smiled sheepishly. I think my leg and a couple ribs are broken, he said awkwardly. The doctor sighed and shook their head. Again, they said. Did they just say again? Yeah, Dr. Gerald said, smiling. All right then, take off your shirt and lay down, they said, walking off. Again, I said, looking over to him as he took off his shirt, showing all of his scars and burn marks. Nope. I felt my face go red. Yeah, it happens more than you think, he said as I looked away. Seems so, I muttered as my face reddened. He seemed to chuckle under his breath as I never introduced myself. I'm Dr. Gerald. It's nice to meet you. I always get that name confused. He said as I nodded, still looking away. I'm Ryan Ellen. It's nice to meet you, I said. Dr. Gerald seemed to pause. Oh, you're that weird D class, he said as I looked over at him, still shirtless. What is he talking about? Weird D class? I asked, tilting my head as he chuckled. Sorry, that was rude. You're just a little famous around the office, he said as the doctor came back over to him. I sighed a little as I looked over to some random corner. Lay down and tell me when it hurts, I heard the doctor say as I zoned out. Why am I famous? Also, he called me weird. At least he apologized to me. I wonder where Dr. Clough is. I have to thank him for helping me. I have to go to him and punch him in his face for even attempting to put me in that room. If it was me, he had to drag me by any means to that room, because I'm not walking over there with my own 2 feet, legs, own 2 feet, hands, and crawling. I'm not. Never. Anyway, I pouted slightly. I felt a slight tap on my shoulder as I turned around, seeing Dr. Gerald staring at me. The doctor said that they're gonna be calling someone to take you back to your cell. I don't know if it's okay, but I volunteered to take you back to your cell if that's okay, he said sheepishly. I smiled slightly. Isn't your leg broken? I asked as he chuckled. Nope. Just a sprain, so I only have to use crutches, he said, standing up and grabbing some crutches the doctor left. Don't you have a broken rib or something? I said as I started to get out of bed. I felt slightly dizzy standing up. You get used to it, he said as I giggled. You shouldn't get used to it, I said as I lose my balance slightly, only to be caught by Dr. Gerald. Be careful, he said, helping me regain my balance. I blushed slightly as I smiled. Thanks, I said, standing straight up. I still feel dizzy, but it's less than before. I stretched a little as Dr. Gerald smiled at me. I'll start walking back to your cell, he said as I nodded. We walked out of the infirmary and started walking down the hall. So what's up with me being a weird D class? I asked as he shrugged. Again, sorry for calling you weird. It's just that not many D class survive all the situations you've been, he said. I smiled. I figured that was the case, but I don't really think I'm that special. I just like to think that I'm calm under certain situations, or try to be, I said, rubbing the back of my head. Well, you have to be some kind of special to survive all these dangerous SCPs, or maybe you just have some crazy amount of luck, he said as I giggled. Maybe he's a little right. I don't even know how I'm alive. That coming from you is quite an honor, I said. He chuckled slightly. You've also caught the eye of lots of high-ranking officials, so that might be a little less lucky, Dr. Gerald said. High-ranking officials? I asked. Yeah, you know, Dr. Clough, Dr. Bright, Dr. Gears, and even Dr. Kondraki. You've caught a whole lot of people's eyes, he said. I looked at him strangely. Dr. Kondraki? I don't even know how to say it. Kondraki? What a weird name. Maybe I'll meet him before I die. Dr. Kondraki? I haven't met him before. I've barely met Dr. Gear. I've only bumped into him once and got his name from a guard, I said as he smiled. Well, they're all a little crazy if you ask me. Well, Dr. Gear is okay-ish, he said as I giggled. I figured that. I mean, Dr. Bright and Dr. Clough are a little strange, I said, smiling as we made it to my cell. Well, I guess this is a goodbye, he said as I smiled. It was nice meeting you, I said as Dr. Gerald pulled a card from his neck and placed it on the scanner, making the door open. Be careful, I said, walking into my cell, not noticing the way Dr. Gerald blushed as the door closed. Dang, another day, another dollar. I do like some dollars. I do like some dinero. Anyway, chapter 7. A rose? And then the plane, of course. Look at that. I got a private jet, everyone. Anyway, I know I ain't a jet. and some people texting, fonts, da-da-da-da-da. Anyways, Wyan's POV. I saw on the ground looking at the ceiling. Lena isn't here, and I'm bored. I know I'm hurt, but won't they still do testing? Maybe not, but I can still walk. I sighed and sat up, feeling my shoulders hurting. Miss Wyan? I jumped as I turned around, seeing that doctor I bumped into. He looked at me as I shuddered at his unfeeling eyes. Intimidating. You scared me, I muttered as he walked over to me. My apologies. Come with me, please, he said, still having the same look. All right, I muttered, getting up, looking up at him. He nodded as he turned his back to me. Now, let's go, he said, walking towards the door as I followed close behind. What was his name again? I think it's Dr. Gears. Yeah, that was it. We walked down the halls. Are we going to be testing? I asked. Yes, he said simply as I looked around, seeing a couple of rooms with windows with weird things in the rooms. This place is bigger than I expected. We made it to a big door that had a bunch of guards. One of the guards seemed to notice us as he walked over. Purpose? The guard asked, pointing his gun at me, but looking at Dr. Gears. I'm transporting D 43,770 to a new site for testing. He said, wait, I'm leaving Lena? The guard nodded and walked over to me. Put your hands out or I'll shoot, he demanded as I reached my hands out. The guard quickly got a pair of cuffs and placed them tight on my wrist. Ow. I turned back to Dr. Gears as he began to walk with me, following close behind. Dr. Gears, do you want the guards to help you transport the D-class to a plane? A guard asked. No, thank you, he said as he showed someone at a control panel his identification card. The person nodded as they pressed some buttons, making the door open. As I looked around, seeing the outside world. So, I was underground? We walked out. I looked around, seeing the outside looked like a desert. I'm being moved? I asked, seeing a lot of cars and helicopters/planes. Yes, now follow, he said, walking over to a big plane as I followed. Please get in, he said as I walked up the steps, trying to be careful not to fall. I said, that is the most basicest I've ever done in my world. Oh my goodness. And it's not, y'all will get it as I continue reading why. I said as my foot slipped, only to have Dr. Gear catch me. I blushed slightly as he slipped his hands under my armpits, holding me up slightly. Thank you, I said as he placed me back on the steps. Please be more careful, Wyan, he said as I walked up the steps. I walked into the plane, seeing a bunch of crates and boxes. Why so many boxes? I moved out of the way as Dr. Gear walked into the plane. Please be careful, he said, grabbing one of my cuffed hands and pulling me along. Where are we going? Dr. Gear pulled me to the side of the plane where there were seats. Please sit down, he said as I sat down, trying to grab the belts that you need to clip. Let me, he said, grabbing the belts as I raised my arm slightly so he could secure them correctly. After clipping them shut, he moved over to my right and sat down, buckling himself in. I wonder what he's thinking. I stared at him as he blankly stared off into space. Why is he here? I know he's transporting me, but I thought Dr. Clef was my main doctor. Or maybe Dr. Bright. I don't know. I hope I see them again. Maybe I won't. It doesn't matter. I'm going to die soon anyway. I'm sorry. I didn't introduce myself, Dr. Gear said, snapping me out of my thoughts. I looked over to him as he looked at me. I'm Dr. Gears. Nice to meet you, Wyan Ellen, he said as he extended his hand. I guess I don't have to introduce myself since you already know who I am, I said as I shook his hand with my still cuffed ones. It's still nice to meet you, though, I said, giving him a close-eyed smile, not noticing the way Dr. Gear blushed slightly. Yes, it's very nice to meet you, too, he said, letting go of my hand. I placed my hands back into my lap as I looked down, seeing how my skin turned slightly red. It's hard to think about it, the thought of death. I'm going to die, I muttered slightly as I leaned back in my chair, seeming to surprise Dr. Gear. May I ask, why'd you say that? Oh, it's not like we're like in the SCP Foundation and being literally used as an experiment on. Like, totally not, fool. Like, I am, we are in Rainbow Land. We are in Goo Goo Land for real. Oh my goodness. He asked as I realized I said that out loud. I said, feeling my face flush. I shook my head slightly as I smiled and looked at him. I kind of just realized the gravity of my situation. I sighed and looked back at my hand, seeing some small scars. I'm a little rattled, I said, giggling. I can't believe I'm saying this to him. I'm going to die and that's not going to change. Even if I make it through the whole month, I'll die at the end anyway. I sighed. I felt someone's thumb quickly wipe some of my tears that I didn't know were there. I turned my head, seeing Dr. Gear quickly retract his thumb, seeing his pupils widen, all he had to have to calm himself. Dr. Gear looked in front of him and closed his eyes. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. He said, It's okay. I said, feeling my face turn redder. I can't believe I started to cry. It totally skipped my mind. I sighed and wiped my stained tears off my face. I sighed, feeling myself become sleepy. I just cried. My energy must be running low. I rubbed my face and looked over to Dr. Gear. I don't think he would do anything, and this seems like this is going to take a while. I sighed and leaned my head back into the wall, feeling myself slowly drift off to sleep. Dr. Gear's POV. I felt someone's headland on my shoulder as I felt my heart flutter. What are you? I looked at YN as she sleeps soundly on my shoulder. Why do you stir up these feelings inside me? It feels so warm, like I'm being wrapped in a warm blanket on a winter's night. But it's more than that. It makes me just want to hug and kiss you. I don't know if you already have someone after you, but I won't give you up. I feel like you're one in a million, that there's no one like you. Maybe you're an SCP, but I don't particularly care about that. It just feels so strange. But I don't want it to end. I felt my face flush a little as I looked away. I turned my head to my hands as I fiddled with them. I don't know much about you, YNLN, but I want to know more. I looked over to her, seeing her mutter under her breath. I do know that you talk in your sleep. That is so weird. I felt my chest becoming lighter as I ran my fingers through her hair. I suddenly felt a buzz snapping me out of my thoughts. I hummed, grabbing my phone, seeing a message from Dr. Clef. Hey, robot. Do you know where a D class named YN might be? Another researcher told me you would know. It read as I sighed. Yes, I'm transporting the D class to Site 2, and then to Site 17 for further testing. I texted them, then turned off my phone, wanting to enjoy this little moment with YN. This beast. Time skip / Wine's POV. I felt someone shake my shoulder as my eyes fluttered open. I hummed slightly, seeing Dr. Gears was shaking me awake. Too close. I felt my face redden as I moved away slightly. Oh, did we make it to the new location? I asked as he nodded. Yes, now let's go, he said as he unbuckled his seatbelt. I nodded and unbuckled my seatbelt, having a little difficulty because of the cuffs. Follow me, Miss YN. Dr. Gears said, walking over to the exit as I followed. So how long was I asleep? I asked as we walked over the plain, seeing a snowy landscape. Wow, it feels like I haven't seen this much snow in a while. I looked around, seeing nothing but nice, undisturbed snow. I looked around some more, seeing there was some tire tracks and footprints. We must have come a long way from that desert. I looked back over to Dr. Gear, as he watches me silently. Sorry, I never really seen so much snow in one place, I said, blushing as it started to snow. Dr. Gears looked up at the sky, seeing the snow. Seems there's gonna be more, he said as little snowflakes started to cover his / my hair. Seems so, I said, sticking out my tongue, catching a few flakes. Let's go, Dr. Gears said as he turned his back to me and started to walk towards what looked like to be an entrance. I nodded and followed close behind him, seeing him press his identification card to a scanner as the big door opened. Dr. Gears, you finally arrived, a researcher yelled, running over to us. Oh, is this the strange D class? They asked as I looked at him and pouted. Rude. Dr. Jones, where's Dr. Iceberg? Dr. Gears asked. Oh, here's preparing for your arrival. He's getting some tests ready for the D class, they said. The researcher looked over to me and smiled. Here, let me help you, they said, walking over to me, uncuffing me. There, now you can go to testing. they said as I looked over to Dr. Gears. Dr. Gears nodded as he turned to me. Please follow me, he said as I nodded. Don't these researchers know it's rude to call someone weird? I know, right? We walked down towards some hallways as some researcher looked over and stared. It is also rude to stare, I said as we continued down the hallways. A cat cried as I quickly stopped and looked over down seeing half of a cat. What? I asked, looking at it as it pawed at my pant legs. It's cute, but like, what? I bent down as the cat meowed happily, seeming to want to be picked up. I looked over to Dr. Gears as he continued walking. I need to catch up. I stood up quickly as I quickly ran after Dr. Gears. Wait! I said as he stopped and turned around slightly. Miss Ryan, please don't get sidetracked, he said as I blushed slightly out of embarrassment. Right, sorry, I just got distracted by that weird cat, I said, pointing at that cat as it rubbed against my leg, wanting attention. That's SCP-529, or as some call it, Joey the half cat. I looked at Dr. Gears and then back down at Josie. Oh, cute? I picked up Josie, accidentally looking inside her insides. Oh my god, it's completely black. I felt a shiver climb up my back as I quickly looked at Dr. Gears. Get going, please, I said as he nodded. Me and Dr. Gears walked down a couple more hallways as we made it into a door. What's gonna happen? Dr. Gear pressed his identification card on the scanner, making the door open. Ah, Dr. Gears, someone said as we walked into the room, seeing a man with a scarf. Is this Dr. Iceberg? Look at him, looking icy. Like, for real? The man walked over to us and looked at me. Ah, D-class? He asked as his face turned sour as he glared. Oh shit. I felt the color drain from my face as Dr. Gears glanced at me. She's the one everyone's been talking about, Dr. Gears said, walking into the room as Josie jumped from my arms to follow. This guy's face seemed to light up. Oh, you're that girl, he yelled, grabbing my hand, shaking it. It's very nice to meet you. I'm Dr. Iceberg, he said, smiling. Well, that's a full 180. I looked down to his hands. It's nice to meet you. I'm Wyatt Ellen, I said, smiling. I looked at his hand. He's not letting go, and his hands are abnormally cold. I watch as he squeezes my hand tighter, still giving me a kind and loving smile. Ah, your hands are really cold. They're like a dead person. I muttered the last part without even noticing. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to say that, I said, blushing. I looked down at my hand, still seeing him squeeze tighter. He's angry, isn't he? It's fine, Wyan, he said as I felt my face redden out of embarrassment. Miss Wyan, please come over. Please come over here. Like, please come over. Dr. Glass called as Dr. Iceberg's grip instantly loosened. Ah, coming, Dr. Gears, Dr. Iceberg said, walking into the room as I followed. I looked at Dr. Gears. Now, Miss Ryan, please go into this room and talk to it with about whatever comes to mind, he said as I nodded. I'm guessing they're giving me an SCP paper to read. Dr. Bright and Dr. Clef were probably giving me special treatment. They were really nice to me. I looked into the window, seeing what it looked like to be an astronaut. We're going to talk about betta fishes. Anyway, I tilted my head to the side a little in confusion. Alright, anything I need to know? I asked. SCP-1233 is pretty much harmless. We mostly just want to see how you react to it, Dr. Gears said. How I react to it? It's an astronaut. I looked back to SCP-1233, seeing him looking at the window. Can he see us? I asked. No. Probably, Dr. Iceberg said as I nodded. I walked over to the door that entered the astronaut's cell. Alright, so just talk to it, I said, reassuring myself. Yep, Dr. Iceberg said, opening the door. Stay calm. I breathed in, walking into the room as the door closed behind me. I let out a breath and looked at the astronaut as he stared at me. Hello! I am champion of the moon, defender of space justice, and destroyer of evil. I have come once again to your charming world to learn more about your strange culture and seek aid for my people in their ongoing war against the moon monsters, he yelled as I looked at him. Why doesn't that sound familiar? Oh, hello, Moon Champion. I'm Ryan Ellen. It is very nice to meet you. How about we take a seat and talk? I said, walking over to the interrogation table and chairs, sitting down. Moon Champion walked over a picked up chair and sat down. Damn. I say, this is a little weird. I never knew Earthlings take seats. He said. I stuttered. He took me literally. I meant you should sit down in the seat. It's a phrase. I said. Moon Champion looked at me. Oh, that does make a lot more sense. He said, sitting down. I giggled slightly. Brother. What kind of childish... Yeah, that kind of childish amazement and innocent, you remind me of him. I felt my face flutter as I smiled. Flashback. Big sis, big sis! Bien yelled, running up to me. With his astronaut helmet on. That helmet. He used to wear that all the time. Yes? I asked, looking away from my phone as he jumped on my lap. Want to play a game with me? He said, smiling at me. I don't know. I'm pretty busy. I joked as he pouted. Come on. You're not doing anything important. Just reading on your dumb phone, he cried, looking at me. I sighed. Fine, let's play. But I'm being Moon Monster. I yelled, getting up and grabbing a cute knitted alien hat. No fair, I wanted to be the monster. He yelled, running after me. What, that stupid game. He loved it so much. He wanted to be that monster so I would chase him. But you already have the Moon Champion helmet on, I yelled, running away from his giggle as he giggled too. End of flashback. I looked down at the table. That dumbass. You have to go, making me remember you right now. I felt my eyes water as a few tears landed on my hands as I wiped them away. I have a question for you, Mr. Moon Champion. Are there more like you? I said, looking up at him once I regained my composure as he nodded. Yes, many more, but I'm the strongest out of everyone. Why are you leaving then? He said as I giggled, making him look at me. I smiled as he seemed confused. Are you from his planet? 'Cause I'm pretty sure you're out of this world. He said, completely serious as I blushed. What? I asked. This guy didn't really use a pickup line on me. You're very pretty and cute. And I'm having a hard time believing you were born on this planet. he said as I stared at him. Oh, thank you. I was cut off as the intercom came to life. Miss Ryan, please walk over to the door. Dr. Iceberg said over the intercom as I got up from my seat. Guess that's all the time we have. It was nice meeting you, Moon Champion. I said as he stood up to the extending at hand. It's nice meeting you too, fair maiden, he said as I shook his hand and giggled. I let go of his hand and walked over to the door, seeing it open. I wonder why we're stopping. I walked into the control room, seeing Dr. Iceberg looking at me. I wonder what goes on through your mind when talking to those things, he said simply as I looked at him. Things? I asked as he sighed. Dr. Iceberg turned his back to me and walked over to Dr. Gears. The next test is already set up. Would you like me to take YN to the testing site? He asked Dr. Gear as he spared a quick glance, then nodded. I have a feeling that Dr. Gear doesn't like to talk. Dr. Iceberg walked over to me and grabbed my hand, pulling me out of the room. We walked down the hallway as I looked at the back of his head. Well, this is awkward. For real? I muttered, feeling the tension in the air as he sighed. Yeah, that's one way to put it, he said, and kept walking. I have a question for you. How are you still alive? He asked, looking at me with a slight glare. Luck, probably. I don't even know. I said, blushing under his watchful gaze. He looked ahead and kept walking, contemplating my explanation. That's a shitty excuse, he said, making me tremble at his cold tone. You must be hiding something. You're not normal. And the Foundation will get to the bottom of it, he said. I'm weird like everyone here sees me. I understand I'm not supposed to live this long. I sighed and looked down, feeling my eyes water. I sighed. Giraffe? General Staff 45, please move to the Sector 11 to clean up, a voice said over an intercom, but I wasn't paying any mind. What are you going to do, cry? Man, you're so pathetic. Oh All you want is attention and for someone to help. Go ahead and cry. They don't care. They just get annoyed and probably hit you. Maybe then you would get the attention that you want, you whore. I heard a voice whisper as tears welled up more. Shut up, shut up, shut up. I yelled in my head as I wiped my tears. Nothing will change if you cry, and you know that there's no point in it. I looked at my feet as they moved across the white floor. I smiled and looked back at Iceberg as he seemingly didn't notice my mini breakdown. Smile. That's what your mother wanted for you. Even in the worst times and in the darkest hours, smile, because for you, there's nothing more to do. I smiled even though my heart aches. I was snapped out of my thoughts as we made it to a door. Go in there, he said as I did what was ordered. What's in here? The door closed behind me as I felt a shiver run up my spine. They locked me in. I walked towards, seeing the room completely darkened. I looked over, seeing a light shone on the old computer. Hello? I called as the computer sparked to life. Hello, Miss Yandere. It said as a face appeared on the screen. Oh yeah, this is, so I don't remember this SCP's name, but this SCP is insanely smart, and it usually is the one that causes like this is a very smart SCP. I'm going to tell you that right now. Even though it's an old computer, trust me, if it wasn't a smarter or slightly smarter computer, bro, it could literally mess up the whole SCP Foundation in a whole. This computer is smart and caused a lot of, what are they called? Like, I forgot. Man, look at my knowledge. Look at my brain knowledge, man. Barely there. But, I forgot what they're called. Hold on. I'm going to call them breakthroughs because I really don't remember. But, they would just cause mass eruption and everything in the SCP Foundation. That's why they have to limit this computer's access a lot, because this computer's just so smart. It just plans on escaping every single time because they don't want to be there. I wouldn't want to be there either. I don't blame this computer at all. Anyway, how do you know my name? I asked as the screen flickered. They told me your name and properties. Let me out. He said, properties? Let me out. I looked at him and sat down in front of him. Let you out? Properties? I don't know what you're talking about. I muttered, looking at the screen. Let me out, it said. How? I asked. You need to hook me up to the internet, it said, as I got up and looked around the room. I sighed and looked back at the computer screen. There's nothing I can hook you up with, I said as the screen flickered. They planned this. Fix it, it said as I looked at it strangely. How am I supposed to do that? I asked. Use your properties, it demanded as I looked at it strangely. What properties? I asked. This thing must be broken. Your ability to survive. Use that, I demanded. Yeah, no, it said. I said, not caring anymore. The screen flickered quickly. It turned to a black background with a white X. What? Hello? I said, getting no response. Well, guess he doesn't want to talk anymore. I sighed. I lifted my head slightly as at the intercom sparked to life. Miss Wyan, please move over to the door, Dr. Iceberg said as I walked over to the door, only to be stopped by the computer sparking to life as well. Wyan, I will warn you, these people don't have humanity, it said before turning off again. What does that mean? What does it mean they don't have humanity? I mean, they aren't that mean. Maybe they do bad things, but I bet they still have some kindness in them. Girl, come on. This is what we call hallucinations. This is what we call fakeness. This is what we call delusions. For real. For real. The door opened in front of me as I walked out, being met with Dr. Iceberg. Dr. Iceberg grabbed my hand and started to pull me down a hallway with haste. Shit, he's pulling so hard it's starting to hurt my arm. He walked down the hallway, muttering a few things under his breath. What is he saying? Dr. Iceberg stopped at a door and ripped his identification card from his neck and pressed it to the scanner, making the door open. Dr. Iceberg quickly shoved me into the room, making me fall on the ground, making me scrape my knees. Oh, ow, shit! I looked back at Dr. Iceberg as he gave me an icy glare and closed the door. He just left. I looked at the door, then back to my knees. I sighed as I pulled up my pants and rubbed my knees, seeing some blood slowly starting to come out as I winced. I need to treat this, I muttered as I stood up, walking to the bathroom seeing it was the same one as the other one. First, clean your hands. I grabbed some soap and washed my hands at the sink. I looked up from the mirror, seeing the bags under my eyes. I need to clean and take out any debris from the wound now. I grabbed some toilet paper and ran it under some water, and that got it all nice and mushy. Gross. I muttered as I quickly cleaned my wound, making me flinch slightly in pain. Now I need to cover it up with something. I sighed and started to look around. I looked at the toilet paper and groaned. That won't do, because it'll just fall off. I sighed and walked back to the main room, back into the main room with the bed. I could rip the sheets and use that, but that's rude. I sighed and looked down at my clothes. Could I rip up my clothes? I blushed. Yeah, no. I guess I'll have to do that without bandages. I sighed. I looked over to the bed and suddenly feeling tired. Guess I'll sleep. I walked over to the bed and laid down. Dr. Iceberg's POV. And Dr. Iceberg will be mentioned as the bitch. I stomped down the hallway scowling. Shit. How could this happen? With a D class, no less. I heard doctors whisper as I walked by. People have probably pushed their papers on him. That's why he's so mad. Someone whispered, but I didn't pay any attention. I walked down the hallway as he looked down at my hands. Her hands were so warm. Shit! How could this happen? I need to get rid of her before these feelings come to a climax. I sighed and opened the door to Gears and my temporary office at the moment. I sat down at my desk and I placed my face in my hands. What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? I don't think I can kill her even if I wanted to. She is so cute but so stupid at the same time. She must be an SCP to make me feel this way. Plus her obnoxious properties. But does that really matter? It kind of feels good. My body feels warm. It's like my body's filled with pleasure. I groaned and looked down at my pants getting tighter. This bad.
So foreign this, if exposed reasons, I'm not gonna rid off the but awesome mercy.
So, long story short, to make this super quick, super easy, Dr. Iceberg did, he pleasured himself while thinking about us. And then he was basically like, I gotta stop being obsessed with this girl, and kind of just stopped and cleaned himself up, pretty much. It gets really specific, so if you guys want to go check it out, y'all check it out, but...
Okay, thank goodness we went past that perverted area. The author thinks that Dr. Bright has the attention span of a 2-year-old, which I don't know. Do y'all agree with that? If so, tell me why, or just say, yeah, I do believe that, because it's Dr. Bright. No reason other further, blah, 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 blah. Anyways, chapter 8. It will break her. Dr. Glass POV. I moved some papers, trying to find a picture I took. Damn it, where is it? I sighed and grabbed a file, reading the name out loud. Wyan Ellen. I muttered as a smile creeped up on my face. It doesn't matter. This picture was blurry anyways. I'll take another one while I get the chance. I opened her file, seeing a bunch of papers and notes from her other therapist. I grabbed one of the note and started to read. Wyan Ellen seemed to have a post-traumatic stress disorder from the incident. The symptoms she has are insomnia, severe anxiety, guilt, and unwanted memories. I leaned back into my chair, placing my knuckle on my cheek, using it as a rest. I looked over at the date. April 5th, redacted, at 6:21 a.m. A car crash happened at the back roads of hometown, killing the patient's mother and younger brother. The paramedics on site described the crash as a point of impact in the front of the car, making the car flip. The car looked like it hit a pole, but there was no pole near the crash site. The paramedics said that the patient was thrown from the car about 20 meters and landed on the side of the road. The paramedics on site said if we were arrived early, we could have saved the mother and the brother, but sadly the car caught on fire and they burned alive. The only reason that the patient is alive is because she was thrown from the car. The patient seemed to be wrapped in bandages from which origin we do not know. I paused for a moment, processing the information. I sighed, so she was the only survivor. I grabbed a tape recording of the first interview with YN. May 26th, redacted. Miss Ellen, may I ask what happened when you crashed? A male voice asked. It happened so fast. YN's voice groggily muttered softly. Start from the beginning, the man said. We were driving down the road. We were all going home after getting dinner, and she stopped letting out a sob. That man, we ran into him, she cried. Our car hit him, but then everything turned black. I was laying on the ground and the man was yelling at me, and she stopped as I heard her crying and sobbing. Oh, my heart. They screamed for help. I couldn't do anything. It hurt so much, she cried. The beeping of the heart machine sped up, and there was some shuffling sound. Please calm down, Miss Ellen, the guy said as there was a loud slam. Get the fuck out, a male voice said. Mr. Ellen, please, we need to question your daughter. He was cut off. I don't care what you need to do. She just woke up after a month. She needs her space. What I know now as YN's father yelled as there was a short shuffle and the tape cut out. I sighed and was about to look at the notes until there was a knock on my door. Yes, I asked and quickly hid everything. May I come in, Dr. Glass? Dr. Edison said. Yes, you may. I said. Dr. Edison walked into my room, closing the door behind her. Slut, I thought, noticing how her skirt and shirt were a little too high/low/tight. Boy, what about you, perverted? Shit. Let the lady wear what she want to wear. Damn. I didn't know y'all were this insecure. God damn. Jesus Christ. This bitch. He is a artificial bitch. Anyways, Dr. Glass, can we talk? She said in an overly sweet tone as I stood up. About what? I asked as she swayed her hips back and forth. Ugh, you sleep with everyone in the office, and now you set your sight on me? Well, about this, she muttered as she handed me the picture of Wyatt playing with SCP-999. I sighed and placed the picture on my desk, and I asked as she walked closer. Well, I wanted to know if you're having any relations with a dirty D-class. I mean, it would be really bad if anyone found out, right? So why won't you give me something? She said, placing her hand on my crotch and rubbed. Dirty slut. You know nothing of what kind of a person YN is. I felt my blood boil. I grabbed her and pinned her against the closet wall. Something, huh? Oh my goodness. Oh, this is gonna get graphic.
20 years later, after skipping such event,
I turned down the D-class hallway. I stopped as I noticed Dr. Bright and Dr. Clef taking YN's cellmate out of her room. Let go of me, you fuckers! She yelled as Dr. Clef tightened his grip on her arm. Come with us, Dr. Bright said, starting to walk down the hallway. Fine, damn! She yelled, ripping her arm out of Dr. Clef's grip. What are we doing? She asked as they all started walking down the hallway. I smirked. It's her termination day, isn't it? I slowly followed behind and didn't seem to notice. They didn't seem to notice. All right, go in here, Dr. Bryce said as they all walked into the interrogation room. This is too perfect, I muttered as I walked into the other room where you would look in and see what's happening in the interrogation room. I watched as they sat Wine's cellmate down and restrained her to a chair. So this is the room with no cameras, Dr. Bright asked, looking back at the black corners of the room where the cameras used to be. As Dr. Clef hummed, yeah, they removed them, Dr. Clef said, laying down some tools on the table. Wine's cellmate looked back at the tools and back to Dr. Bright and Dr. Clef. What is this? She yelled as they hummed. Nothing much, just a termination, Dr. Bright said, grabbing a knife. I smiled as I pulled out my camera and started to record. Black Mirror, here I come. For Wine's cellmate glared at them. Termination for what? She yelled. After a month, we kill you. Boo-hoo. That's too bad. Dr. Clef said, smiling. But I thought this I was supposed to get out after a month. She asked, scared. Yeah, that's what we told you, but do you really think you're getting out? Dr. Bright said, pressing the knife to her neck. Dr. Clef grabbed a knife, and as he pressed it down on her arm, making crimson blood come out. As she grunted, what the fuck? Why, meaning you wouldn't do this by some other means? A lethal injection, maybe? Or just a bullet in the head? She said in pain as Dr. Clef cut more. No, they don't want to do that. They just want to cause as much pain as possible. Considering it is a punishment. Dr. Bright, a punishment for what? She asked, panting, as Dr. Bright started to cut into her shoulder, making her wince. Wyan, of course, Dr. Clef said darkly. Wyan's cellmate looked confused and smiled. What? Are you jealous? She giggled darkly as her eyes filled with an emotion. Man, I wish I could keep that promise we made YN, but it seems I'm getting killed by some jealous bastards. She was cut off as Dr. Bright pulled her hair back. What promise? He asked. The girl smirked and spit in his face. You'll never know what her sweet lips tasted like. She asked, panting as her lips curled into a dark smile. She's lying. She has to be. Dr. Clef's eyes narrowed as he plunged his knife into her stomach, painting his hands red. She'll never love monsters like you, she muttered, giggling darkly as Dr. Clef slit her throat, making blood splatter on them. The color drained from her eyes as they looked both at each other. Do you think she was lying? Dr. Clef asked as he shoved his hand into his pockets. Probably, but we can't be sure. Dr. Bryce said as he brushed his fingertips over his lips. I wonder what she tastes like. He muttered softly as I walked up the two-way mirror. I smiled and knocked softly, making the two of them turn their heads, glaring at the mirror. This is too perfect. They both ran out of the room as I turned to the door and heard one of them scan their card. The door opened and I gave them my winning smile. Hello, I said happily as they both looked at me. Dr. Glass? Dr. Bright asked as I showed them a camera. Seems like you made a mistake, I said as Dr. Clef chuckled. I thought we had a deal, he said, curling his rifle. Careful. All fair in love and war, I said as they glared. Dr. Clef took a step closer as I looked at the camera. I wonder how she would react, I said as he stopped. Would she hate you guys, or would she be afraid? Just imagine it. You try to take Wyan's hand, but she flinches away in fear. Or maybe she would be screaming at you. Just think. How could you kill her? She was my friend. I hate you. Oh, that would be amazing, I said as they glared at me. Now, you guys wouldn't want her to see this, I said, walking closer to them, waving the camera back and forth. They growled. So what do you want? Dr. Clef asked. I paused as I walked past them into the door. Don't do anything I wouldn't like, I said, walking out of the door with the same kind smile. I hummed it as I looked down at the camera. Let's find Wyatt and get some more pictures. I like the sound of that as I walked down the hallway. I wonder if I can get one of her naked. Then again, I'd rather leave that as a surprise for me on our wedding night. My smile growed as I made my way to my office. Now, I don't think they remember this, but do y'all remember that literally this girl, y'all don't remember that literally she's in the SCP Foundation and probably won't be able to ever get out and probably will be killed in like a damn month? Like, or is it just me? Like, like she has like a termination due. Probably not so soon, but soon. So yeah. I also like that her friend was like that. Like I'm not gonna lie, like I'm pretty like 99% sure that her friend didn't do that. But I like that she made them jealous before she died. I like that she did that. Lena, you the girl. She's like, I bet y'all are jealous that I tasted her lips before y'all did, bitches. For real. Or else she was just really obsessed and tasted our lips when we were sleeping. Either way, gatekeep girl boss. She's like really gonna gatekeep all that information she did. Oh my goodness. Kind of scary, but kind of like, gatekeep, gaslight, girl boss. For real. Anyways, Dr. Bright's POV. I groaned. Oh, what are we gonna do? I asked, taking off my glasses and rubbing the bridge of my nose. Don't know, but this is where we split, I think. Dr. Clef said. What? I asked. Well, I don't mind working together, but in the end, we're gonna have to be at each other's throats anyway, he said as I nodded. Yeah, all right, but let's agree on something, I said as he looked at me, moving his rifle to his shoulder. If we get the chance to erase that tape, let's do that, I said. Dr. Clef smirked. Yeah, okay, just know if I get the chance to shoot you... Okay. Just know if I get the chance to shoot you in the head, I will, he said, starting to walk out of the door. Same to you, I said. It doesn't matter anyway, fucker, I'm immortal, I said. I sighed and placed my glasses back on my face. I walked out of the room and walked down the hall. Damn, I didn't know Dr. Glass was like that. He's the worst kind of person to get on the bad side of. I'm poking a bear here, and now I have Dr. Clef on my ass. I walked over to my desk and sat down. I sat and looked at all my paperwork. I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. Dr. Glass can notice any changes in physical and physiological and physical behavior, so he probably knows who's after her and is starting to place precautions to protect him in her future. Damn, that confident bastard. Still, the bigger problem is Dr. Clef. I'm pretty sure that guy ain't even human. Bro got like a third eye and probably the devil himself. I'm so fucked. I sighed and looked at my paperwork. I don't want to do work. I groaned, slamming my head on the desk as an email popped into my computer. I sat up and opened the email. The D class 43,770 has been moved to Site 2 and will be moved to Site 17 shortly. We are sending out an email to everyone over the clearance of Level 2. Please keep a close eye on D class for suspicion of any anomalous properties. I read as I smiled. I grabbed my paperwork. If I get all my work finished here, I could be moved to Site 17 or Site 2. Site 17 always has a bunch of problems, so it could work. I smirk. Let's do this. I grabbed one of the papers and started to write. 10 minutes later, I'm so bored. This is why I push most of my papers work on Dr. Iceberg. Whatever. I don't really have the attention span right now. Maybe if I can go and eat something, I'll get my attention span back, I thought, sighing. No, I just gotta stay focused. I looked down at the paperwork and slammed my head on the desk. Oh my goodness. He really said, boink! Oh my goodness. Y'all, this is, like, for me, like, this is getting worse and worse. Oh my goodness. I feel bad for Ryan so bad. I feel really bad for her. Like, no cap. I feel bad for this girl. Anyways, what do you guys think is going to be happening next? Do you guys think that Dr. Bright will be able to get to Site 17 or Site 2? Do you think that Ryan will be now called an SCP? Or do you think she'll still end up being a D class and being terminated, quote unquote? But will she really be, if she does go down that path, will she really be terminated? Or will she just be dragged to a certain place and they basically kidnap her into the real world and kind of just keep her away and just kind of get away from the SCP Foundation in general? Let me know in the comments down below. I honestly have no clue. Those two could really work out really well for her, kind of. But who knows? Who even knows, my lordies? Also, I'd like to mention the reason I kind of messed up on these sentences and got stuck is because some of it was spelled wrong, some of it didn't make sense, and my brain just kind of didn't go past it and got stuck on it. So I do apologize for any if I missaid anything, because I'm pretty sure I missaid a couple things here that probably didn't make sense with the rest of whatever I was reading. So apologies on my part for that. I'll try to minimize that, but it happens because I am human. It happens. But anyways, if you guys have any more little theories or anything like that about what might happen with the story, no cheating, by the way, or anything like that, or you guys just have some plain theories about any SCP that we have encountered on here or know more about the SCP, because honestly, the old computer one, I have completely forgotten the number of that SCP because it's talked about a lot. It's a very interesting old computer. Like, you could literally look it up on YouTube if you remember the number, but you can technically just look it up, like SCP old computer, and you would find that certain computer. If you guys have theory about any SCPs as well, I'd also like to know that, because honestly, I know you guys have some probably some cool theories / probably new SCPs I've probably never heard before in my entire life, because there's like hundreds, around thousands of SCPs. It's weird, confusing, but cool at the same time, because SCP. Anywho, your girl sadly gotta go. I do hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more amazing videos, guys. And I hope you guys have an amazing day. I will see y'all in the futuristic video. Bye and peace.